to make sure that the live stream is actually running. Should take about 10 seconds to catch up. So, again, starting a new construct file. There we are. And on that new construct file, we're going to go new project. I'm going to go find SD landscape. New project. SD landscape 16 by 9.
Does this say you're live for me?
Then you need to refresh and you need to close that window that's happening in the background. If I see Fortnite up again, I'm sending you out. You got it, Miles?
Yeah.
Miles, it's still open. I'm waiting for it to close.
Literally clicking it right now.
Oh, wait. Oh.
Okay, well, I didn't hear the mouse click, so that's what was concerning to me. All right. So, like always, we have our project created, and we have our little gray boundary. I'm going to copy the window size right here. So I highlight it, Control-C to copy it. I'm going to click anywhere in this gray background to go to the project layout size, and I'm going to paste that size in. So we're shrinking it down to be this 854 by 480. So now my layout size matches my window size. Do you have Construct 2 up, Z? Okay. 16 by 9, SD landscape. So we copied this layout size, the 854 by 480, and we put it into the layout size. So window size got copied to layout size. Until you click in the gray background, you won't see the layout. Yes, it did. 16 by 9 landscape. Okay. That's all right. So, once we have that copied in, what's our next step? What have we done for all these series of games that we've done the last two? It's landscape, 16 by 9 SD. Okay. What's the first thing that we've done for this?
Add a background.
Add a background. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to double click, add a new sprite. Paste it over here. I still have this size in my clipboard. So I'll go click the resize. If I paste, I think I'm going to get the commas in there. Nope, can't take the comma. So I've got to type in the 854 manually and then the 480 manually. So in the guide, they pick a yellow color for this. I'm going to say you can pick whatever color you like. I'm just going to try and go different. We did the rotating colors for the falling spikes. That's a feature we could add in, but we're not going to right now. I'm just going to go with a yellow color, and I'm going to sort of clean things up a little bit so I can copy that color easily. So I'm at 231 red, 237 green, 17 blue. I'm going to go 235, 235, 15. That way it'll be easy for me to type in and remember that color again. So 235 red, 235 green, 15 blue. That's a nice, easy number for me to remember. Paint that into the background, and I can close up that background sprite. So 854 by 480 for the size. Yep. So I have to name it background, and then I want to set the size to be exactly where it needs to be. I'm going to put it close, and rather than keying in the half numbers, I'm going to say once it's close, I'm going to use the arrow keys to get to those half numbers, which is 427 by 240. I'm going to go over to my layers, and obviously I'm going to rename this layer 0 to background. Background layer, because this is the trend that we've been following. We've been doing background layers, player layers, HUD layers, ground layers, things like that. So I've got my background sprite on my background layer. I'm going to lock my background layer for right now, and I'm going to add a new layer. And the way this game is going to play is we're going to have a ground layer and then a player layer. So I'm going to add my ground layer, and I'm going to add my ground sprite next. So this layer is going to be called the ground layer. Okay, so there's the ground layer. And on the ground layer, I'm going to add another new sprite. Okay? This sprite is going to be our ground. The size for this one is going to be a little bit bigger. We're going to overshoot so that we can adjust this game and change the difficulty. And I'll explain where that goes in a little bit. So I'm going to say 900. So I'm overshooting the X by about 50 pixels. And for the height, I'm going to say we probably won't take up more than half the screen. So I'm going to say 300. So this is going to make a really big rectangle. For the color, I'm going to go to my off black color, 50 by 50 by 50. So there's the off black color. I've got my sprite. And what I should be able to see now is I've got it where I can make it really low. So I've got a high area to jump, and I can slowly increase the height of this ground as the game gets more difficult and give you less of an area to jump to get away from things. That's just an enhancement we're thinking of for the future. Okay, the name of this sprite, simply ground. Okay, so we've got the ground piece created. Off black color, it's larger, we can adjust it, and now we need another new layer that's going to be for the player. So I'm going to add another new layer. This one's going to be player layer. And as we get through the player layer, we need a sprite for the player. Okay? Am I going too fast? Would you check in with Z and see where he is? So I've got another new sprite I'm adding in on the player layer. This one's going to be my player. And this time I'm not going to have a white player. I'm going to go with the off black player. I'm going to keep the color matching the ground. So I'm going to leave the color where it is. I'm going to set the size for the player to be 50 by 50. And I'm going to paint in that off black color for the player. So I've got my sprite in. I'm going to lower the ground a little bit. And I'm going to find this little part here. Sprite is going to get renamed player. And I think we're going to make 2 more sprites for this. Just want to check the live stream, see how it's going. It's still going good. Good. All right. 2 more sprites. We're going to make a dodge sprite and a wall sprite. The dodge sprite is going to end up having bullet behavior on it. The wall sprite is going to have solid and bullet behavior on it. But we'll see why in a second. So another new sprite on here. I'm going to set the size for this sprite. Still on player layer. Yep, haven't left the player layer. This one I'm going to make 30 by 30. So it's going to be smaller than the player. So 30 by 30 for our size. And I'm going to stick with that off black color. So there's this one, and I'm going to rename it to Dodge. So plain and simple, that's going to be something that's spawning that we dodge through. And then the last thing we're going to do is another bigger sprite. This one's going to be called Wall. So on here we have the size for this one as 100 by 350. And the color I'm going to leave as that off black. So you're going to see this one's going to be a lot taller. But as the game plays, these pieces will slide down the screen. And this one will spawn at random heights, so you have to jump over different intensities. And then this one will spawn, can also do a height range that'll spawn at. We'll have to move. So I've got, for right now, 3 objects.
What is the size of the player?
Size of the player is 50 by 50.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The size of the dodge is 30 by 30, and the size of the wall is 100 by 350. Again, these are just suggestions for the sizes as we go through. If you find that you want to make things a little bit different after you get the basics working, feel free, make it different. These are all just set to be basic start pieces. So we've got our objects created. How's everybody doing? I'm going to do a quick look.
You may want to change your name of the sprite to Wall.
Oh, thank you. I did not change the name of my sprite to Wall, so I'm going to name that Wall. So I've got player, dodge, wall, ground, and background. And I'm actually going to lock up the ground layer because I don't need to edit it for right now. Question. What's up?
My ground, is that
What's the size of that one?
Yeah.
So if you locked your ground layer,
If
you
you
need
want
to
to,
unlock
yeah.
it. Well, that's on display.
I know you're gonna be
Unlock
able to
it.
catch up with the
Yeah,
video.
have like ground and then just make it bigger so that eventually we can have it creep up on the screen and then limit the amount of space the player has to jump. So right over there, that's all we're looking to have.
Okay.
And then on this one, I want to make sure our alpha is at 255 because that's full alpha because I can kind of see through your ground in the background. I don't want to see that. And you're going to stick with the full black color?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine. So there's that. You've got dodge, player, and then wall. You can lock back up the ground. You're good for right now.
Okay.
Okay? Yes, Nick. Yep. Ground, I want to unlock the ground layer. So click the lock to unlock it. Click this sprite. Make it bigger. So it's not going to be perfect. We don't need it to be perfect. We need more. More. Stop. Now slide it so it's closer to the middle. Perfect. So now, as you're working, this can creep up and take away jump space from the player. Okay? So the idea of that is that eventually we're going to add that enhancement that the ground slowly creeps up higher and higher, and maybe it'll go back down as we go.
Can I delete this array thing?
Can you delete which one?
This array one?
Yeah, why'd you add an array?
I need to.
Yeah, I didn't add an array.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to start adding behaviors now. I think everybody's good. I'm doing a quick look around. Jacob, you good? You got your objects made? All right. So what we're going to do is on the ground sprite and the wall sprite, we're going to add solid behaviors. So I'm going to go over to grounds, behaviors, add, and I'm going to find that solid behavior. So the ground is there, solid behavior. I'm going to go to the wall sprite. I'm going to add that same behaviors, solid behavior. For the player sprite, we're going to add that platform behavior, and we're going to test out and see what's going on now. So player sprite, add behaviors, platform.
No solid, right?
No solid. Nope. We're going to deal with collisions afterwards on a non-solid basis. And I'm going to do a test now to see how things are working. So I can run around.
Quick question: is the player supposed to be on the ground layer?
The player should be on the player layer.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't done anything to the dodge sprite yet, so there's nothing there for that. I've got my wall here, and then just the way I laid it out, I actually have like an underpass to go under. So that's something that we can deal with. So there's our basic controls. Now, how many people built like an Infinite Runner as their independent game from the project before we started doing these simple ones? Did anybody do an Infinite Runner in here, or was that period 3? You had an Infinite Runner? And then somebody else in period 3 had an Infinite Runner. So in your Infinite Runner, did you let the player move a little bit forward, a little bit back, or are they always in the same spot? They're always in the same spot. So that's one of the things we want to have the Infinite Runner take care of, is things are always in the same spot. So what we want to do is we want to pick a spot on our screen, and we want to be able to keep our player there. So, you know, eventually he'll fall down to the ground or he'll be here, but we'll pick a spot somewhere between, I don't know, 100 pixels to like 175 pixels. We'll pick a spot somewhere right around here and say that's where the player is going to stay. And to do that, we're going to go to the event sheet, and we're going to start off by adding a global variable. So I'm just going to press V on the keyboard. It's going to create a new global variable. I'm going to go with nice camel case. It's going to be starting, capital P for player, X position, capital X, capital P, and then lowercase for the rest of the word position. Starting player X position. Okay? Can I also show a hint here? If I go,
What is the value going to be?
the value's going to start off at 0. If I type in this, starting, space, player,
It's not going to work.
space, X, space, position,
It's just going to put them all together. It's not going to work.
it will work, because watch what happens when I hit tab. If I hit OK, it automatically says, and it says some of the characters were invalid and removed. So I was able to automatically get it to do the camel case for me just by using spaces. We're going to start it at 0 because there's actually a trick I want to show you in this one, is that we could say that that's 135 or 145 and get it to be the exact spot we want it to be. But I don't want to have to key that in every time. Like, let's say I'm changing and say, oh, this jump is too hard. I need him to start a little bit further back. I want to be able to move him a little bit further back, move the player, and then have it respond like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to, on the start of layout, set the variable to wherever we dropped our player on the layout. So the first event we're going to add is system on start of layout. And we're going to add an action to the system to set the value. We only have one variable right now, and we're just going to do player.x.
Yeah.
We're going to set the value in the starting X position variable to wherever the player is right now on the layout. Okay? What do you need help with?
I just re-put that.
There is no object in the X. It's on start of layout, system set value.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay? Then what we're going to do is on every tick, because right now it'll work, the variable will go, if we debug and look at the variable, we'd see it. Now we want a system every tick. What we're going to do is we're going to, on the player, set X, and the X is going to be that variable starting position X. So what that does for us, right now, if I run the layout, I'm not going to be able to move left or right anymore. Okay? I'll go back to this in a second. If I run the layout, I can't move left or right. Okay? So that's the way that I want it. But if I go over here to layout, let's say I want him to be more over here, when I start this layout, he'll still be able to play further up. Okay? And I didn't have to go in and change any variables. I was just allowed to drag it. Like, let's say I changed this up and I said, oh, I want him always to start at 135. He would jump to that 135 right away. We don't want that to happen. Okay? And then what we want to do on the bullet sprite, the dodge, we're going to add a bullet behavior to this. So there's bullet right there. That's going to get added in. And then one thing I want to do is I want to zoom in and show you over here the way this bullet is going to go. It's going to go off the screen the other way. So I want to set the angle from 0, because 0 would be off to the right of the screen, to 180. So if we run that, we can see our bullet now moves off to the correct way. Kind of boring. It's not there on the screen anymore, but we'll deal with it.
Do you go to your event sheet for 1 second?
Yeah. Event sheet is... So it's on start of layout. Set the variable to whatever the X position is of the player. And then every tick, we make sure that the player's X position is set and locked at that spot. Okay?
And then what is the stats? Starting.
He's adding in where it starts.
Okay.
The angle's 180.
The angle is 180. I'm going to go back on my layout and add that same behavior to the wall, because I want the wall to move towards the player as well. So it's going to be bullet behavior, and then the angle of that bullet behavior is going to be 180. Okay? We'll worry about speed later on as we go through. But now when I run this, both my objects head towards my player. And I do want to zoom in and make sure my player starts like right on the
You
ground.
want to get the wall to ball behavior?
With mine,
Okay.
it goes like this.
Because you didn't set the angle to 180. So on here, look up on my screen. Angle needs to be 180. It's at 0 right now. Nick,
I hit the wall when it's moving forward, so I already glitching forward.
when you hit the wall, you already glitch. So if I run and the wall's coming towards me and I jump, yeah, I glitch because I'm stuck there. We haven't programmed that yet. So you can kind of clip and stick in the wall because the wall's being given instructions to move, but it's also being given instructions to stay solid. Okay?
In the wall, you wanted bullet behavior, right?
The wall we wanted bullet and solid behavior.
Bullet and, yeah.
Okay? So right now we're kind of boring because we don't have any more objects moving. What do you think we're going to do to make these objects move? Duplicate them and then have a spawn system, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I was saying, if we did it, we could easily win this game.
If we had nothing spawned, you could easily win, yeah. Because again, we obviously have to like add in a score and have the score count up like every tick or every second that goes along, you add one to the score. So what we want to do is on the event sheet, we're going to add something that spawns an object, but we're going to do it smart. I'm going to click up on this global number starting position, and I'm going to press V again to get a new variable, and this is going to be spawn type. Spawn type is going to start off at 0, and we're going to let the game either give it a 0 or a 1, and then if it's a 0, we'll spawn a bullet. If it's a 1, we'll spawn a wall. I'm sorry, a dodge or a wall. I didn't want to call it a bullet. So we have this spawn type, and what we're going to do with spawn type is we're going to add a system every X seconds. And the X seconds that I want to do, I'm going to say is a random 0.5. And again, I'm just making these numbers up. So if you think 0.5 is too quick, make it longer. If you think 2.5 is too slow, make it shorter. And I'm going to say it every 5 to 3.5 seconds. Okay? What we're going to do is we're going to ask the system to set a value of spawn type, and this is where we're going to type something in, and it's going to be the floor. What does floor mean for our JavaScript code? What do we remember about floor? Alston. It rounds it to the lowest integer. So 1.9 would become 1. 2.2 would become 2. 2.7 would still become 2. Things like that. 0.75 would become 0. So we're using the floor to just get numbers, and we're going to say floor of a random from 0 to 2. So what will happen in that 0 to 2, the reason why, we want to make sure it gets to an integer. And so the only integers it can get to in this here, floor random 0 to 2, is either a 0 or a 1. Because it could be 0.1, 1.1, 1.9. It can never get to 2. So 1.9 will always round down to 1. And then 0.99 will always round down to 0. So this is just a flip-flop that's going to give us a choice. 50-50. Okay? We could change it to 3 and then have a third enemy type spawn. That'll be for enhancements. So what that means, what do I have? Oh, syntax error. I need an extra parenthesis to close up that floor function. Okay? So every 3.5 seconds, this is going to say that our random spawn type is going to either be a 0 or 1, sometime in between there. We're going to add a sub-event on here, so I'm going to right-click, add, sub-event, and I'm going to ask when the system compares spawn type to be 0, so it's compare variable. Which variable I'm going to compare? Spawn type, when it's equal to 0, I'm going to ask the system to create a dodge object. So it'll be system, create object, choose object. It'll be the dodge object. On the layer, I'm going to delete this, start the quotes, and say I want it on the player layer. And now, the X and Y are tricky here, because we want these to spawn off screen. For right now, we're going to put in solid numbers, but we could later on change it to be random numbers still off screen so that it still has that time to go on screen. So I'm going to say 900 because our X is 854. So it's spawning a couple of pixels away. And then for our Y, we want it to be close to the bottom, but not over the ground. So your ground may be somewhere different than mine. I'm going to try 300 at the start and see how this looks. Okay? So the other spawn type that I'm going to do on here is I can just copy this event 4 right now and paste it and say when spawn type this time is equal to 1, because those are the two values that it can be, what we are going to do is instead of creating a dodge object, we're going to create a wall object. All right, so now let's go run the layout and see if our thing spawns. The first things move, and then we have dodge.
It should be 900 by 300, you said?
900 by 300. Oh, right now there's my wall. There's another wall.
You're screwed because you can't make it high enough.
Yeah, so I've got to adjust. So I can dodge this one.
Are these all walls close stuck together?
Well, remember, if you go in empty space like this, it's just kind of going through.
Mr. Wilkes is losing pretty badly.
I am losing badly in this game. What's up?
Like the thing the walls are all stuck together. Yeah. I think the walls are stuck together.
Where's your ground? Your ground is here. Over here, you've got every tick except that random 3.5 spawn type. You have them all at 0, so it's 0. So it's you did this as when spawn type is 0. This needs to be a sub event of this one, and this one needs to be when it's 1. So you were spawning an infinite amount of walls, and now we've got it there. So now our walls are spawning, but we've got to do something on here that makes them not be so tall. So the Y value of the wall, for me, needs to be greater than 300. 300 is not enough for me to jump over. Josh, you suggested I could increase the gravity. Right now, I don't want to touch gravity. I want to just get everything working without and using the default values for these things. So I'm going to say, let me do a live stream check. Still recording, still going, perfect.
Still going, but it's a little hard to read the live.
It is hard. Once the live stream records, it'll be there. See what's up. Okay, I'll be there in a second. I'm going to take this and I'm going to say, let's try it at 375. And let's see if those walls are a little bit easier for me to jump over now. So I'm going to try this. I've got my up arrow key. My first one spawns high. Oh, I can't do 2 walls in a row. That's tough. So the wall is still too high. It's better, but it's still too high. So I'm going to say for the wall, let's try and change this. And I'm going to say, let's see what 450 looks like. So I'm going to run this one here and see if I can jump over those walls. First one goes through. I squeak under. That's better for the wall. I was able to jump over that. I was able to jump over that bullet. Here. Here. So, all right, this is working pretty well. Oh, I ticked on top of the wall there. So we're allowed to jump on top of the walls in Infinite Runner. So I can, like, slide up there. So I think this value is pretty good right now. My random, I've got 2 up. I got trapped there. In an actual game, that would be game over because those spawned. So I might make it so that my walls can't spawn that quickly together because I'd kind of be stuck if they spawn that quickly. So right over here, I'm going to say that the 0.5 is too quick. I'm going to say like 0.75 to give myself a little bit more time, just in case 2 walls spawn really close together. And then 450, I'm going to say like 475 and see if they'll be a little bit lower still. Because then eventually we're going to randomize those heights, and so some of the walls will spawn taller and some of them will spawn shorter. Oh, that one's easy for me to get over. All right, so I'm going to leave the source code up for a second. I'm going to float around and see where people are. Recording is still going. I'm going to stop and then make my way around. What's up?
So I put like platform behavior on my layer.
Yes, you may sign up.
And like I put full behavior on the dodge.
Okay.
And I put like
Where's your event sheet? Right now you've got no events. Let me go bring up the live stream right now because I want to pause on the events. And I want you to see what events you're supposed to start making.
All right.
You keep up with the events. You made the things, you added the behaviors. Here's our live stream. So right over here. Also, right now, create a global variable, spawn type of 0. Start that over here.
When I ran my left,
What about the wall?
I have the wall spot. I do that spot, but then the only thing that really spawns is that
Spawn type.
my wall does not seem to spawn.
Spawn type, and
What
we're
do
going to
we
say
do about
spawn type is equal to 0 to start. The other variable that we had in here at the start was starting player X position. And we set an initial value of player
Yeah.
dot X. No, I think
So you have to take care just like it should be.
Okay. We'll go back over here. The next one is on starter playout system set starting player X position player dot X. Keep going with that, and I'll come back and check what's going on over here.
What action check right here?
For number 3, that was every X seconds.
Just going through and fixing the numbers real quick.
It's a system. It's a system. The action for number 3. For number 3, it was set value. That's that tough one because it disappears. It knows that value of what spawn type.
Yep.
Random, a floor of random from 0 to 2. Then you need parentheses. Random. Parentheses. Nope. You need to open up because random needs its own parentheses as well. So open up another set of parentheses.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
If you
You
click
close
on
the
this,
floor. You need to
what's that?
open
Is the mouse connected or
random. You
Yeah.
need to open the random parentheses. So now
Zero,
it's random from
zero,
range
no,
of 0 to 2.
Yeah. It doesn't look like
Okay,
there's
and now you
anything
need to close the
special on the
floor
wall.
parentheses. So that's how that code
Yeah,
works.
I
And then
don't
you
know
hit
why
done.
yours wouldn't
Can we make sure
And then you can keep going with
that
those
you're on
subjects.
the layer?
Nick, what's up?
From player layer. Run move to layer.
What's up?
Player layer. And just is it like am I able to like see like what layer he's on with
Okay,
his
so
wall
What is, what
what's-
was the thing that you missed?
layout? All right, so it's
But I'm asking
It
you,
is a
what is
player
not
layer,
working
okay.
right now as compared to what mine is?
Right there, Mel.
Okay, so the
I really
space.
don't know.
So then go and move the ground layer so it covers that up. Remember I said make the ground layer bigger?
Initial state.
It should be, ready? Not only did it move, you changed the size of it. I said make this huge. Make it bigger so you don't have to worry about where it is. That way it shifts a little bit one way or another. Because eventually it's going to go up and down. Eventually it may make
Well,
gaps
can you go to my
in the ground.
event sheet for a
I
second?
said make it big. That way you don't have to worry about it. So leave it there for now.
Is it
And
0-2 on
That way
the
it's-
starting
what
the
else
floor
is that
random? Is it 0-2?
That's it. And then you're good.
Okay.
So is it spawning forward? And then can you sketch on top? I want to see you drop onto one of those walls. You can land on top. Okay, so yeah, because now it's working. But if you let it sit there,
Wait,
wait for
I'm
the
gonna
wall
call
to
this
hit your
one so
piece,
you help me.
and then you
Yeah.
actually glitch through the wall. So we'll deal with that in a second.
Mr. Wilkos.
Yes, go up the entire bench.
Mr. Wilkos.
1 second, I gotta check back in with Z and then I see you. What's up? I gotta see then Josh, I'll be back to you. What's up?
I did.
Oh no, gravity's not ready.
Set X to running.
So every tech player set X. And what is the value? That says where starting player
Versus 1
position.
put 0.
So start typing in starting player position. It should pop right up. There it is. What's going on over here?
You'll see in a second.
So what's happening is, well, I just had it.
You have it at
changed.
0, 0.
No,
Yeah,
I
I just
know.
changed
We
that
just
now.
changed it
Okay.
now, but when we had it at 1, it wasn't spawning anything more than just one wall.
So create object, be just the height, and then it's every random seconds. These are sub events. This is not a sub event of the one below. And every 3 to 5 seconds, it's going to. Oh, you're playing set X position. You're not supposed to set X position. You're supposed to set spawn type. So spawn type needs to be your random piece. So that's why now your player is like stuck over here. Because in reality, we want the player to start over here.
Yeah.
Oh, change the spawn type to 1.
And why is it going all the way over there?
Oh well, I'm getting full screen. I think.
No, it is full screen. It's still starting over off the layout. So, not on end of layout.
I had that in start.
It's on start of layout.
I had that in start. Yeah.
On start. So, on start of layout, we're not setting. We're setting that to player.x, and then every tick we're setting
trying to add my
the player x to that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
That's not there. That's the X and Y.
There it is. Your first one moves through. They can jump over, tick on top, jump over, stay under.
Down.
All right. How's everybody doing? Jacob, do you got it, or you want me to come back over here?
Oh,
Dobbins.
Yeah.
This question should be good.
The reason being is
From
because
Gus.
your ground layer is much higher than mine.
Like
I said
we don't have a
Your
game.
ground layer.
We don't?
There's no. We're not. There's
Well, oh yeah, well no shit, but
Same change.
well actually I wouldn't say that. They could always
I
move
want
the
this
game in
one
the
so
plot.
you're working on it.
That's the only other.
So I'm
That's
gonna do this
the,
ground layer here.
we're not.
Because if you use my
that
numbers,
that'd be
your
like the
ground
worst
is way
case
up here.
scenario, and I
This is
don't
one
want to
point
play
over
that.
here.
There's no way we're playing.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, I know.
If I lower this
Yeah.
ground layer,
Not chance.
okay, but right now we're working on this part. So this is the part I want to see now. So there's your bullet you have to dodge. And right now it's too easy for you to dodge because you don't even have to jump or get out of it, right? And now we're just waiting to see
How is
if
that a
the wall
question?
spawns. So right now I haven't seen a wall spawn yet. So let's go take a look at your code for spawning a wall. And we said, it's not random 0.2, it's 0, 2. So that's why it was only ever spawning bullets, it's because it was always running down to 0. Let's take a look at it. So there's bullet,
Wait, did you
jump,
say Gavin?
bullet, bullet, there's a wall, you jump the wall.
Okay.
Alright, so does your wall look like a good line to jump? You can sketch on top of it or like grind on top. You got it?
I give up for
Alright,
the then.
that's
Done.
working there.
What's that?
It's stressful.
This happens.
Miles, close that.
That's when I run it.
Is your game running? Is everything working right? I don't see anything flying across the screen, so I don't see it working. So then when you're waiting for people, I want your hand up, and I want you saying, Mr. Wilkos, I need help, not going back to Fortnite.
When I run, it just goes straight across.
So then you're spawning it too quickly.
Okay.
All right. Instead of 0.2, it's 0.2. So it's a range from 0 to 2, not 0.2. Because 0.2 will always round down to 0, and so you'll only ever spawn the dodge objects. Okay? So there's that. Now that's really high compared to your ground. All right? And we're still waiting for a wall. There's a wall. So
0.5.
we round up.
Oh. Yeah.